Welcome everyone to the Warriors in Business podcast. Thank you once again for tuning in to another episode. And today we've got an awesome guest lined up to speak with us about everything that he's doing as a veteran business owner. Thanks for listening into all of our episodes and including all the clips that we've been uploading to the various podcast channels like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube as well. And so please go subscribe to our channel and share the show with your friends and family and even other veteran business owners, first responder business owners, so that they can tune into these awesome conversations that we're having with people that are on the front lines of small business America and in entrepreneurship and business strategy and so much more. So we thank you again for helping us promote this show and for getting the word out for all that we're doing. Joining us today is Tom Croteau. Tom is a veteran business owner. Tom is a veteran of the United States Air Force. He is the owner and president of OperFi, and we are excited and delighted to have him join us today to talk about his time in the military, along with how he became an entrepreneur and founding OperFi and so much more. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jordan. Thanks for having me. It's an awesome platform and very cool to allow veterans to kind of share some of their experiences and hopefully inspire some others out there.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, Tom, I would like to thank you and say how much we are grateful for your service to our country, for keeping our community safe and free. It is not a privilege or honor that I had personally, and so I am eternally grateful for someone like yourself that has served our country.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think I speak for a lot of veterans that are in where we did our time. We appreciated our service, but we don't really feel like we did all that much, I guess. We appreciate the appreciation. But I always look back at my military career and kind of think that I left a lot on the table. And I think that it goes with a lot of different veterans that get out that they wish that maybe they could have done more. And maybe they can pay dividends years later, which is what I'm trying to hopefully do.
So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and your time in the military, as you were just mentioning, and what eventually led you to becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for the question. So my military career, I started born and raised Northern California, and had a lot of opportunities to kind of go to different colleges and nothing was really kind of resonating with me. I didn't have that real desire when I was, 17, 18 years old to kind of go off and live a dorm life or go away to college. I stuck around town and I went to a community college and played soccer, and I had goals and aspirations that I was going to go play D1 here, go do this or go do that. And, life always hits you, challenges, and you always come up against those choices. And I don't know what came to me, but there was just one day that I decided that I wanted to pursue a career of being a pilot. And I don't know why the military really resonated with me. My father was an Army veteran. My grandfather was an Air Force veteran. And there was something about it that I thought that was a unique career path, and I wanted to. And don't get me wrong, there's the patriotism element to it as well. But I met with my recruiters, and I saw some awesome opportunities where I can complete my education, go to school. I could play soccer for the Air Force. I could potentially transition to the Air Force Academy, and go on to be a pilot. So I pushed that dream, and I accomplished, I believe, everything that I set out to do while I was in. I finished up my degree while I was in. I really wanted I really wanted to focus all of my energies and intentions around aircraft. So I went in, I joined to be a C5 crew chief. So if anybody's familiar with the C5, they are the largest military cargo aircraft in our Air Force. Okay. So large, in fact, that you can fit 6 Greyhound buses, 2x2x2 within the cargo bay. And there's these just massive beasts that are constantly braking, and they can fit 75 troops. There's only 2 active bases, one at Travis, one at Delaware, but had a great time. Learned a lot, really added to a lot of my mechanical skills, and I was a deployment manager for my aircraft maintenance squadron. And I had the opportunity to kind of prepare different squadrons and flights and individuals for deployments. And so had a really great experience while I was in. And the goal was, hey, I'm going to finish my degree. I would love to transition. I'd love to go to officer candidate school, transition to be a pilot.
Yeah.
And there was something about it when I was young and maybe dumb and had a big ego that, I don't know, the Air Force wasn't really, while I was in, it wasn't calling to me. There was something that I really thought that, I don't know if I could do this for the next 20 years. And I had already finished my degree while I was in, and I thought I always had an entrepreneurial itch. I always had something that said, hey, I'd love to go out and start my own business. And I had some good mentors at the time. I had a buddy of mine who he had started a wine company, and I always looked up to him that, he was young and ambitious and started up his own wine business. And so I had passions to go out and pursue my business degree, go and get my MBA. And so that was kind of the trajectory that kind of led me to looking at different business schools, taking the GMAT, and having all these schools reach out and contact you. And lo and behold, there's a lot of universities that are out there that are interested in veteran candidates. And one of those universities was the University of Notre Dame. And 10% of their graduating class every year is prior military. And I got an invitation. I had the dean of admissions at the time. He had deep military roots from his father and grandfather, and got a letter and got a phone call. And I was a California kid applying to California schools, and never did I ever see myself, moving to the Midwest and northern Indiana and South Bend, Indiana. But I went out there and soaked it all in, and got to really. I transitioned out of the military August 3rd of 2010, and I was in orientation August 9th of 2010. And so it was this
real quick,
really surreal experience, basically getting ripped away from everything that I knew to being just this, lone wolf. And the good thing is I had a lot of military brothers that were there as well, that we had a really great camaraderie. But that is what led me to kind of my entrepreneurial, kind of my first step in studying entrepreneurship and trying to figure out what that next career move was going to be for me.
Well, that's quite a story and quite a transition you made, especially to leave the California sun and move to the Midwest. That's a big jump for you.
It was interesting because, and it was this, I feel like joining the military was a safer route when I was younger. I joined when I was 20 years old, and there was something about knowing that Uncle Sam was taking care of you every step of the way. Yeah, you're going to basic training, which, okay, yeah, that's maybe scary. And you're going with people that you have no idea who these people are. But I always knew that Uncle Sam, you were always going to get 3 meals a day. You always had a roof over your head. You always had, it was very safe. And you knew when your paychecks were coming. And transitioning out into, going to business school and just being completely out of my comfort zone. That was probably the most challenging transition. But again, the core values that are at Notre Dame and the school and the student body, I just embraced it, and I drank the Kool-Aid in, and never watched college football until I went to Notre Dame, and now I'm a huge college football fan. So you kind of have, or it comes with the territory. So, but it was a great experience. I met the most brilliant people that I was ever surrounded. It was interesting. We'd have professors that would say, look around this room. These are the smartest people that you will ever be around in your entire life. And it really is true. I mean, just brilliant individuals. And getting out, and the next step was I really focused heavily on entrepreneurship, all the startup classes, and that was kind of really what I was passionate about, eventually seeing myself doing.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so take us then to the next steps after that. So you're at Notre Dame, learning about entrepreneurship in the business school. And so when you graduated, then what happened after that?
I was extremely fortunate. I had, all these graduate programs, they always want individuals statistically to take the Fortune 5 companies and take the consulting gig and take this one and take that one because the salaries are high. It makes their program look better and their placements. So I had a lot of those different opportunities, and I through the alumni network, had this unique opportunity to start with this 4 or 5 person shop. It was a financial services company, trucking related. They had a trucking outfit where they managed all the back office support, a logistics division, but it was very entrepreneurial. They only have 5 employees, and I was, I guess, the rogue student by taking the very low salary for an opportunity. And
Yeah.
I opened it with at the time, my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. We talked about it too, and she had just finished up nursing school, and it was this Houston, Texas opportunity, and I had Fortune 5 opportunities going back to California, which she just came from, and we both said, well, what the hell? Why don't we just take a risk and see what this does? And if there was something about that. It was just in my gut that I felt like this is, the path that I needed to take. And so we packed up, we moved to Houston, Texas, and I started with this small entrepreneurial company in a niche financial services area called factoring. And we specialized with trucking and logistics companies. It was the best opportunity because I had a chance to grow a small business and put policies and procedures in place and figure out how to grow and scale, which then that business eventually got to a point where they were an acquisition target level type of company. We had awesome business processes. It was scalable, good morale, and it was just, I felt like when I was hired after business school, it was to the point where I don't want to say, the job is done, but I felt like I contributed enough where it was like, okay, what are we going to do next? And for me, because again, I always had that entrepreneurial spirit. Ever since, this goes back to my military days, I have had a notebook and with wild, harebrained ideas.
Yeah.
For phone apps, for different technologies, for just the most ridiculous stuff. I'm always, if I'm out for a run or if I'm thinking about something, I'll jot something down. And for about a year, I'm sitting there, with my wife, and I'm telling her, well, what about if I start this? What about this? What about this? And I was, leaning towards all these different apps, and she's like, you have no idea what you're doing. Like, you're not a software developer. You can't do this. You don't. And there was one day I said, what if I started up my own factoring company? And she's like, yes, I can get behind that. You know what to do. You've been doing it. You've done it for
Yeah.
somebody else. Why don't you jump out and take a leap? So it was at that moment, kind of the light bulb, aha. And so in 2019, that's when we launched OperFi. We launched it in a very unique way. And at the time, so my stepson he had just graduated high school, so he was off to college, and so we were empty nesters. And so I'm thinking about how are we gonna, where are we gonna move, where are we gonna start this thing? We were thinking about, we had lived in Houston, Texas. We were gonna be moving to Austin at the time, and I had a very unique opportunity. The original intention, I was going to get closer to family, and closer to my dad. My dad, like I said, he's Army veteran, and he currently has Parkinson's, and he's just, you want to get closer to your family as they're getting older. And so
Yeah.
I was thinking about moving up to Boise, which we did do for a number of months. But as we're launching this idea and this business, and I'm kind of thinking about where we're going to go, I'm out for a run one day, and I see one of those 1-800-GO-RVing rigs on the side of the road. And I get back from my run, and lo and behold, my dad, because of his condition, he is looking to sell his rig. And he had an RV that he was looking to sell. It was a 29-foot Jayco. And I got back home, I said, hey, babe, why don't, instead of us moving to Austin or going here, where then you're going to have to get this nursing, find this other job and do this, why don't we just pack up everything in storage and hit the road in the RV and kind of just see where it takes us? We'll go visit family and we'll check things out, but
Yeah.
maybe Austin's not, the best spot. Maybe Boise's not the best spot. Let's just kind of see what the opportunity presents itself. And she totally bought in, and we packed up all of our stuff in
Oh,
storage.
sweet.
And we hit the road for about 9-10 months, and it was the most incredible adventure. And we started this alternative finance factoring, and it's tailored for the transportation space. So
Yeah.
and what factoring is for kind of your listeners. Factoring is the buying and selling of accounts receivables. So what we do is we provide working capital to mom and pop, small to medium sized trucking businesses. And factoring stems across all different industries. So, I mean, there's multiple different industries where it's very common.
Okay.
Factoring kind of has sometimes a negative connotation, sometimes a positive one. The negative side is like when you hear about a Fortune 500 company that needs factoring, you think, oh, wow, their receivables position is distressed.
Hmm.
Instead of the entrepreneurial startup who can't get a line of credit because hasn't hit his or her 2 years in business yet, that individual is looking for working capital, right? And so that's the space that we play in.
Okay.
So we start OperFi, and because it's trucking related, we are able to. I've got trucking products on my rig. I'm testing out trucking apps, and we were able to just tour the countryside and stop off at truck stops, meet with clients, customers, and vendors along the way, and it was a real, I guess, grassroots campaign of just establishing and gaining clients and customers and meeting different vendors. So it was the most incredible experience, not only from just with my wife and being able to see this beautiful country, but just starting a business from scratch and meeting with clients face to face. So it was very, very rewarding, and we miss it every day.
Yeah. Wow, that is awesome to hear all of that. And there is so much to unpack with that. I actually want to go back and mention something of what you had said earlier. And that was when you were at Notre Dame taking classes in entrepreneurship and in business, and how the push for the students to be, graduates and moving on to careers was to look for Fortune 500 companies or roles at those companies. But yet you were the outlier, as you mentioned, and went to a small business, an actual startup, like it took an entrepreneurial leap, as it were, in that type of way to work in that sort of realm. I just thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that there was something about just the allure of starting with a place where I had I could wrap my hands around. I can really be an agent of change, and I could be somebody that can create policies and procedures, and actually my voice was heard. And there's another thing too, is obviously when people go to business school, they're looking at salary and all that type of stuff. Jordan, I come from nothing. I've always I've come from very humble beginnings. Didn't have much when our family had lived a modest life, but
Yeah.
nothing like, I didn't have these high expectations. And I wasn't born with a silver spoon in mouth that needed to go out and get $120,000 salary straight out of business school. And
Right.
so there was something about that, and then also something about the military and my enlisted career path, that military really kind of instills resilience and grit into an individual. I always I always kind of joke around that I think that the military breeds awesome entrepreneurs, because when you're in the military, you've got 5,000 different bosses, and you never want to work for anybody anymore for the rest of your life, or listen to anybody. So
Yeah.
the military does a good job making veteran entrepreneurs. But there was something about all that in my past and the upbringing piece of it, where I was willing to take a chance. But not only that, my girlfriend at the time, kind of similar upbringing, and she was willing to take a chance. And the fact that, like, you've got this crazy, yeah, you can go back to California, and we can live that kind of cookie cutter lifestyle.
Yeah.
And to kind of know that I wasn't alone was huge, because she's my number one supporter, has been since day one, especially starting the business and our RV trip. She's phenomenal. But so that's, I think, important, is to find a good support system, whether that's friends, family, and people that won't judge you for making these crazy hairball decisions. But just having the trust and confidence and in your gut, and knowing that you're making the right decision, and not doing it for anybody else, not doing it for the statistics of a school, or what your family thinks that you should do. I think that most people just really should follow their gut, and if it feels good, then bet on yourself day in and day out.
Yeah, definitely. And how fortunate you are to have had a girlfriend and now your spouse who was like-minded in that way with you and willing to take a chance and willing to take a risk and to be supportive of all of your efforts with that. That's quite a blessing. And, I'm sure that definitely encouraged you a
Yeah,
lot and motivated you
she's my
to
number
do it.
one cheerleader, that's for sure. So
Yeah.
sometimes she gets sick of me, but we've got it's tough because we started a business together and we lived in an RV together. She was my first employee. So that was a challenge within itself where you've got your wife who is she has a nursing background.
Yeah.
She was a ER nurse, postpartum nurse. So she comes from nursing and has no idea anything about administrative skills or, how Microsoft Office works or Outlook. And her starting off, we're in the RV and I'm pointing out like, okay, so that's a dry van, that's a flatbed, that's a Conestoga, this
Yeah.
is this. And so she's like learning trucking as we're on the road. And
Oh, that's so cool though.
it was a really cool learning experience. And so she became employee number one. And to the point it was very stressful because you're starting this business, you're out on the road, and as business is picking up, things are getting busier. And so we definitely kind of have good understandings between each other that we don't talk about business as much as we do. We should,
Hmm.
we keep it to a minimum. And the goal was always to push her out so then that way she wasn't as involved. So it wasn't like we were constantly. Now we're to the point. One of my buddies, one of my best friends, is he joined the team last year as our CFO, one of my good buddies from business school. And so now he and I are always brainstorming different ideas and always talking strategy. And I'll come home and she'll have no idea what we're doing. And she's like, you haven't even told me about this initiative or, and it's like, well, that's a good thing, maybe. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's good to be able to bounce ideas off of, others that are willing to hear them out or maybe tell us, that's not a good idea, or dude, that's awesome. Please go do that. Like you need to make that happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the support system is critical.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also want to, you were, again, there's so much to unpack from everything you just mentioned. I definitely want to ask about OperFi, but there's another business question that came to mind when you were talking about joining the company in Houston. And that was how you implemented strategies and solutions and built up that small company to an acquisition level, or at least on in the radar of being acquired. What can you just give us a little bit more detail of what you did, what processes, what systems, what things you implemented that did scale the business and bring it to that level?
Yeah, so awesome question. And again, I'll always go back to the fact of how fortunate I was for that opportunity. And I started with a business where and again, a similar business that I'm running right now, factoring business, and ground level, 5 employees. I am starting essentially zero policies and procedures. And because of what we do as financial services, we are very susceptible to fraud. And the other team members, all young, anywhere from 22 to 20, 25, I think were the age ranges, me being the oldest at the time. And me kind of jumping in there, and I'm new coming to Houston. A lot of the employees were friends with the owners and had family ties or friendship ties. And I'm kind of going around and just asking each team member, like, okay, what is it that you do here? What can you explain to me what you're looking at? What does this document mean? And this, that, and the other thing. And the employees couldn't describe to me what they did. They knew the steps that, okay, well, I'm supposed to click this button, I'm supposed to click this, and I'm supposed to push this through.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what does that document mean? What's on it? Like, explain to me what it is, what's happening on the that back end. And a lot of them had no idea what they were doing. And it opened up the company to a lot of errors and omissions. And we really got to see, because like I said, it's a any financial services business is susceptible to fraud.
Yeah.
And we took a lot of licks. We experienced on the ground level trucking companies submitting fraudulent paperwork. We didn't do background checks on certain clients that we were working with. until one day we started implementing those and found out that we had some felons and criminals that we were, advancing funds to.
Oh
And
man.
so there was just, we got this sense of, when you go and work for Bank of America or Wells Fargo, financial, or for any large scale business for that matter, you start and you get an employee handbook and you get policies and procedures and manuals that tell you how to do your job. And same thing with the military. When I was in the military working on aircraft, we had what was called TOs, technical orders. You
Yeah.
had to follow those TOs to a T. You had to troubleshoot issues. You had to look at it and go, okay, in this particular situation, I got to follow this, this, this. Okay, if this light goes on, then you got to go turn to page 44 and you got to follow steps 1 through. And so everything is very process driven to the point where you become more or less a drone and you understand how to troubleshoot something or fix something just in a normal business life cycle. And with all these businesses, we didn't have that. And
Yeah.
because of it, we screwed up left and right and had a lot of errors and a lot of problems. And we went, hey, as a team, maybe we should do background checks on these guys. Hey, maybe we should understand the paperwork that we're buying. Maybe, we have to call and verify these particular documents. And so we got we overexposed ourselves on credit concentration limits for a particular trucking company and didn't check credit for certain companies. Or if an invoice went 90 plus days or there were accounting errors, there was example after example of situations where collectively we would say, we screwed up, where's the hole, how do we plug it? And by doing that, we've been able to develop policies and procedures in place. And it's through that experience. It's most individuals can only learn something when they screw up. And it's the best learning lesson when you fail, because now you know why you have to do it correctly the next time around.
Oh,
And
definitely.
it was that experience working with a small startup that you failed and put, processes in place, and you got to the point where it's like, hey, things are working great right now. And with that, where I was fortunate is I was able to take that mindset and all of the knowledge that I acquired over a 7.5, 8-year period, and I was just able to apply it to my own business processes. And I just had an advantage because I knew that I needed to do background checks. I knew about credit limits. I knew that, you have to verify paperwork and you can't trust all your clients. And there's just a number of different things that I was able to pull from those experiences and implement starting from scratch. So it was super valuable, and we still practice and implement all those processes and procedures today.
Yeah. And that is fantastic to have that opportunity to try and fail and to basically and to learn by doing. Really, as you said, it's those through the failures that are the best learning experiences. And more so, I guess what I noticed too is you were asking questions of everything. It wasn't you didn't take anything for granted, but you looked at everything with a critical eye and said, "What is this?" or "This doesn't make sense. Explain this to me." And whether or not you got an explanation for it, you learned more from that, and that was helpful for being able to scale your business and
Mm-hmm.
to make it run more efficiently, and then for you to learn what you did from that to then run the OperFi and to
Yeah.
go from there with it.
I think all entrepreneurs or business owners have to have some sort of inquisitive nature to the
Hmm.
point where you're obsessed with figuring out why this works the way that it does and what levers pull and impact this variable or that variable. So I am constantly on a daily basis looking at industry newsletters and different things that are happening on social media and things that you have to be obsessed with your industry because there's new players that pop up every day, and there's new issues and legal issues and regulatory issues that you have to be on. You just have to know what's going on around you.
Yeah.
Like I mean, you hit it perfectly. Just being inquisitive and asking and having that critical thinking. Okay, how does this impact this, and what is that? I think just being a business owner, you can't just go out there and just blindly say like, all right, well here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna make these T-shirts and good luck. You have to know all the different variables, especially as a small business owner where you're doing accounting, sales, marketing, operations. I mean, just customer service. You have to know every department, every process to begin with. So it's. I think that you have to be inquisitive, and you have to be that type of mindset where your mind can think in all those different places at once to be able to put those cohesive strategies of all of your different business processes together in one.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And in the beginning of an entrepreneurial effort, or at least from what I've learned so far from talking to veteran business owners and first responder business owners that we've spoken to so far here on this podcast, is in the beginning, you kind of have to be a jack of all trades. You have to know how to do a little bit of everything, even if there's something that you don't necessarily like or that may seem more difficult. But if you can embrace all of it in the beginning, then as things get past that first phase and you start growing the business, you can start delegating that stuff out eventually. So, do you think that was something similar that you experienced as well? It's like, okay, I do all this at first, but then later on, I can bring in people who know what they're doing,
Yep.
to to delegate and to divide and conquer, as it were.
100%. So my career field while I was in the Air Force. I was a C5 crew chief, and they're always kind of seen as jack of all trades, master of none, like you said. You've got the specialists. You've got electricians. You've got hydraulics. You've got jets. You've got communications, navigations. You've got all these different career fields that they're specialists, and the crew chief's job is to go out and assess the aircraft and look at all of the different. Oh, that there's these hydraulic lines are leaking, or the strut is having issues, or there's electrical issues here, and so you would call out the different specialists to come out and really fine tune and fix the issue or troubleshoot that particular issue. And that's 100% exactly how you described it. And that's how I feel I am myself. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Yeah.
I understand all of the different business elements from a broad stroke. And right now I have to be detailed. I have to get in there. I have learned a tremendous amount, insane amount. I mean, hell, I've learned things about coding that I never thought I would ever learn just because I have to. Now, eventually, 2 or 3 years from now, I'm not going to be doing that. But as you have to bootstrap. You have to figure things out. And
Yeah.
luckily, I've got my partner who comes from an IT management consulting background, and I mean the dude's brilliant. So for him, he's somebody that's awesome to piggyback off of. But I can't remember exactly what book it was that I read, but there's an entrepreneurial quote out there that basically entrepreneurs, their ultimate goal is to work themselves out of a job. And if you can step away from your business for 30 days and that business doesn't need you, you're an entrepreneur. But if they need you every single day, then you don't own a business, you own a job. That
Yeah.
business depends on you. And I see that as, okay, my goal in a 5 to 10 year period. Don't get me wrong, I love to work, and I'm really passionate about my business, but there is that ultimate goal that you have to think, okay, I need to surround myself with brilliant people that can worry about the finances, or worry about the operations, or worry about the technology aspects, sales, marketing. Because I'm a crew chief by trade. I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. But
Yeah.
in order for me to scale, I really have to bring in those specialists and experts that can get us to where we really want to be.
Yeah. And that's great to make the parallel between your time in the service being a crew chief and how a lot of those things where you had to know a lot of everything seemingly, that it translated into what you do now, or at least had the pre-built desire or drive to want to learn everything and absorb everything. to get your hands into everything, to every little detail, to understand the nuances, and even learn newer things like coding. I mean, you mentioned that, and my head was like, oh my gosh, that I can't even imagine trying to get into that myself. I'm not geared that way personally.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it's
um,
funny because you've got all these things like ChatGPT is incredible. So we use like automation tools like, Zapier and there's different, flow automation task softwares that we use. And you get in there and you're kind of like, okay, well, I wonder how I can make this do this. And it's something that I'm sure a software developer or a coder probably looks at and they're like, oh yeah, that's easy. You just do that. And I just go out on like Google and I figure something, and then I'll go into ChatGPT and be like, hey, how can I do this with this particular software? And then it spits something out, and then it takes you down another rabbit hole, and you're like, okay, well maybe this or this, and then you can get on the phone with support people, and they'll actually walk you through it. And it's like, wow, this is incredible. I feel like and I think again, going back to the whole, you have to have that inquisitive nature, and
mhm.
and you also have to be a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say cheap, but you got to bootstrap, right? You have to
Yep.
make sure that
Hmm.
you're not going out there and spending thousands of dollars on a freelance individual on Fiverr or, freelance.com that someone's going to spend, charge you $5,000 to develop this thing. It's like, well, maybe if I spend a couple hours and just learn how to do this particular task or process, maybe we can do it ourselves in-house. So that's kind of the philosophy, and that's kind of what we try to do as much as possible.
Yeah, and it sounds like even if it is, yes, time invested and hard work put into trying to make that happen, to bootstrap it yourself, it still seems like there's a greater value that you've gathered from that, or at least it's what it seems like anyway, that you've learned more about processes you may not have known, but it inspired you to come up with something new, or you feel like you've done it yourself, like you've built the house brick by brick yourself, or as much as you could anyway, by going even if it is a cheaper route. You mentioned ChatGPT, and we have these tools available to use now, which we didn't have before, and now that we do. And so it's awesome to have something like that to help you bootstrap your way into building what you want to build.
Yeah, it's there's some unique tools out there, but again, I think that you just have to be curious and you have to know that, and you just have to give it the time and energy. And it's like you said, the second that you have that, once you plant that seed where you have and you have a success, and you go, man, I can't believe this can do that. Then it just opens your mind to all the different tricks and things that you can accomplish, and other things that, well, what if I can do this? What if I can do that? I'm a big runner, and so it's my first like 5K. Well, what if I can go this distance? And what if I can do that? And what about trail running? And what about this? It's like once you you plant the seed in any type of successful endeavor, and you come out with it with some success, then it opens your world to different opportunities and possibilities, and it just kind of rewires your brain into thinking, what other opportunities based off of the skills that we've developed, or the tools or resources that we've learned, how can I
Yeah.
benefit, and how can I expand on this? So I'm always into, continuous improvement is kind of at the heart of what we always do.
What are some words of advice, some wisdom, some tidbits, tea leaves, whatever you want to call them, that you would like to share with aspiring entrepreneurs, your fellow veterans or first responders that are considering wanting to launch their own business? They've had that entrepreneurial itch like you had yourself, and they want to get started and are considering it. What would you share with them for them in that type of place?
It's interesting looking back after 13 years of getting out of the military, getting out of the service. And I am super fortunate to have gone to graduate school and studied entrepreneurship. But it opened up a lot of doors, and it provided me with a lot of important skill sets to where I am today. And I will not argue with that. But I do feel like there are a lot of enlisted individuals out there, or even officers, and they're maybe getting out, and how am I going to raise capital? What about if I have this idea? What am I going to do? And I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't go to Stanford. I didn't go to some of these, I guess you could call them gateway schools that really kind of open up these opportunities.
Right.
And starting off my business when I was getting going, I didn't really have access to a lot of capital. And I think that might be an obstacle and a roadblock for maybe a brand new veteran business owner or an aspiring entrepreneur who's getting out there going like, I've got this really good idea for an app, or I've got this I want to do this t-shirt company, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. But how am I going to get money? How am I going to raise money? I'm not, this polished person that can go out there and put together this pitch deck and go out in front of VCs and raise a bunch of money. And I'm not connected with high net worth individuals. What I wish that somebody had told me when I was younger, and that aspiring entrepreneurs, veteran business owners realize, is that there's this whole secondary market of financing, that you do not need to go out and get a line of credit. You don't need to go and find a venture capital. There's purchase order financing. What we do factoring. There's these alternative lending markets, even your bankers can introduce you to. You can go down and try to get SBA loans and everything like that, but there's this entire secondary form of financing and this entire market where you can go out there, and as long as you have a strategy and you've got sales and you've got some traction underneath your feet, don't be intimidated. Go out there, get the business, start building on it, do it as a side gig. And to the point where if you're developing sales and you're developing enough of a online presence and enough of a business model that's really concrete, and as you're actually it's starting to come to fruition, there are secondary finance providers that you can use. I used factoring to start my business. I did not have, and I am I'm a factoring company. I had to have financing in order to start my business. And here I was going to a factoring company to say, hey, I know how to get the business. I know how I can, find these carriers who need invoices, but I don't have all the capital in the world that I can go out and start this, And so I reached out to a factoring company myself who said, I get it. You need 2 years in order for you to get qualified for your traditional line. And they opened their arms and had enough trust and confidence in me, and they gave me that opportunity. And it's the American dream to have these secondary markets where I was able to start with using a factor to refactor the invoices that I was buying, and just slowly build my business one invoice at a time. And after 2 years, I was able to qualify for a line of credit. And so you don't need to go out there and raise $3 million and think that you just, and that's the only path forward. There are alternative forms, and you just have to explore and just, going back to what the military teaches you, have resilience, have grit, and at the end of the day, trust in yourself. And eventually you got to make that leap, and just know that things are going to turn out okay.
Yeah, those are some awesome words of wisdom. And Tom, thank you so much for sharing that. And man, it's been awesome talking with you on this podcast. So now here's the opportunity to shout out your business and plug it here. How can people get in contact with you and for what you guys are doing at OperFi?
Cool. So OperFi.com, OPERFI.com. It's short for Operation Finance. We primarily are servicing in the transportation and logistics market right now. OperFi just got accepted into the Bunker Labs community. So we are in the Phoenix veterans and residents cohort, and connecting with other veteran business owners. And so one of the things that we're trying to expand to is into different markets and into different industries. So, and that is commercial finance opportunities, B2B businesses that don't quite qualify for traditional financing. And we're looking to expand into those different markets. So I don't know, maybe you have a coffee company, maybe you have a t-shirt company, maybe you have a business that has either receivables or a purchase order, or you're a security company that's out there and you're trying to grow and you've got, great opportunity, but you just need working capital. We're interested in those conversations and partnering with individuals like yourselves. We are expanding into that veteran space heavily. If you have trucking and logistics inquiries, we do that all day long. We are experts at that. and we'd be happy to help you out. We've got training programs, tons of resources to save you money. But I guess any type of those opportunities, more than welcome. You can go to our website. You can contact me, and I'll happy to have a conversation with you and seeing what we can do.
That sounds great. Awesome. And for everything that Tom just mentioned, for how to get in touch with him and with OperFi, that information will be included in the podcast description below. So scroll down in the description, you'll find it there. And so, Tom, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. It's been really great talking with you today.
Awesome, Jordan. I really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, it was fun. Thank you so much.
Yep, this is a great time. And again, for everyone tuning in, thank you for listening to this episode of the Warriors in Business podcast. You can check out more info about our podcast at warriorsinbusiness.com. You could also please subscribe and share the show with your friends and family. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. So once again, thanks for listening. And until next time, y'all be good.
You'll see me